Good morning, everyone. We will be starting the press conference momentarily. You are all welcome. All right, you are all welcome. Thank you so much. My name is Nkechi Ilechi, and I am the Policy Director of the Nigerian Center. Good morning and welcome to our media briefing, co-hosted by Nigerian American Community Organizations, to address the recent U.S. government designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, by President Trump. Today, we will be discussing its potential impact on Nigeria, the Nigerian American community, and present a unified call for dialogue and collaboration. Together, we will advocate for a constructive approach that reinforces the historic friendship and strategic partnership between the United States and Nigeria. Following our joint statement, the organizations will outline recommendations for strengthening collaboration between the U.S. and Nigerian policymakers, diaspora leaders, civic society groups, and to ensure that the designation fosters a more secure, just, and prosperous Nigeria. So today you will be hearing from Benga Ogunjimi. He is the Executive Director of the Nigerian Center. Dr. Susan Edi Onwe, she's the president of the Nigerian Physician Advocacy Group. Bukola Olaoye, he's the chairman of the Nigerians in Diaspora organization. And Prince Maduka Nkuku, who is the president of the Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee. And Dr. Malcolm Fabi, the president of the Governance Advancement Initiative for Nigeria. As a quick reminder, this event is open to media only. All remarks are on the record. To request a recorded video, you can email Liz Voiles at Liz, and I'll put it in the chat. And you can also reach out to me and Ketchy, the policy director of the Nigerian Center, and you will get a recording by the end of this press conference. Please hold all questions. We will have a Q&A session following the speaker's remarks. And if you want to ask a question, you can either type it in the chat, or if you click your reactions, you can do the raise hand reaction post out, but that will be following all the remarks. And now you'll hear from Benga Ogunjimi. Benga, over to you.
Thank you, Nkechi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Benga Ogunjimi, the Executive Director of the Nigerian Center. Why are we here today? We are here because on October 31st, President Donald Trump designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern to the United States. This designation carries profound implications for both Nigerian and the Nigerian American community. Because of that, we have gathered as a united coalition of leading Nigerian American organizations, including Nigerian Center and our partners, to ensure that our community's voice is heard and to offer constructive recommendations for the path forward, a path that is grounded in the long-standing friendship between our two countries, United States and Nigeria. This is the reason why we are here today. As we consider the implications of these designations, let us also consider a few key facts of what Nigeria represents to the United States. Nigeria is one of the United States' most important strategic partners on the African continent. United States remain the largest foreign investor in Nigeria. Nigeria is the largest Black majority democracy in the world. Among Black Americans, Afro-Latinos, Nigeria represents the largest ancestry source for the global African diaspora in the United States. Nigeria leads in high-skilled visa holders, academic excellence, healthcare entrepreneurship in the United States. A stable, peaceful, prosperous Nigeria is an American's national interest. Nigeria is not a burden, it is an asset, a strategic asset to the United States. This is why the implications of CPC designations deserve serious consideration and thoughtful engagement. As we consider the path forward, at the Nigerian Center, we would like to offer 3 key recommendations. We want to start to the United States government. As the United States reviews the scope of possible sanctions under this designation, we urge that CPC, as is originally intended and purpose, our understanding that this is not a punitive measure against the Nigerian people. Rather, it should serve as a mechanism for accountability, constructive engagement, and to encourage policy reform in Nigeria. Second, I want to highlight humanitarian considerations to the United States. We call on the United States government to consider the moral and socio-economic implications of this designation. The main perpetrators of these acts of terror in Nigeria, Boko Haram, the ISIS West Africa, are already designated as foreign terrorist organizations in the United States. Their actions have displaced millions and created the conditions that meet the criteria for temporary protected status. That is why in 2023, the Nigerian Center led a coalition of organizations urging the United States government to grant TPS to Nigerians residing in the United States, just as the previous administration has extended the same humanitarian relief to nationals of countries from South Sudan and Cameroon who also face the same acts of terror and armed conflict. We believe that President Donald Trump has the authority and the moral obligation to provide a similar protections to Nigerians affected by armed conflict and extraordinary conditions. We call on the Trump administration to suspend all deportations to Nigeria and to prioritize humanitarian protections during these critical times. And to the Nigerian government, we recommend the following. As we stated in our joint press statement, we acknowledge the complex challenges Nigeria faces: persistent insecurity, acts of terrorism, threats to religious freedom that affects people of all faiths and across several regions. These challenges did not begin today or this current administration. They didn't create them. However, they have the responsibility to do more: protect human rights, strengthen institutions. And we specifically have this recommendation to the United States government: the establishment of a National Security Council comprised of representatives from affected communities, civil society, governmental agency, and non-governmental organizations. This council would provide real-time data, coordination, policy input to improve effectiveness of Nigeria's response to insecurity. Such an initiative will demonstrate the openness, inclusivity, and transparency that have often been seen missing in previous efforts, and will signal a renewed commitment to collaboration on national security reform. In conclusion, I want to emphasize again that a stable, peaceful, prosperous Nigeria is in the best interest of the United States. Nigeria is not a burden. It is an asset, a strategic asset to the United States. Thank you, and I'll turn it back to you, Nkechi.
Thank you, Benga. Now we will hear from Dr. Susan, President of Nigerian Physicians Advocacy Group. Thank you. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Susan A. Dionwe. I am a head and neck surgeon, and I serve as the president of the Nigerian Physicians Advocacy Group. By way of introduction, NPAG is the 501c4 affiliate to the Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas. Our network collectively reaches over 2,000 Nigerian physicians practicing across the United States, and our mission is to advance health, equity, and good governance for Nigerians at home and in the diaspora, and for Americans as well. We're here today to address Nigeria's designation as a country of particular concern and its far-reaching consequences. As you know, President Trump has designated Nigeria a CPC. Our concern is that sanctions following these designations alone will handicap Nigeria's ability to address the true structural factors driving the violence in question. Before we get to our recommendations, let me be clear. One of our top priorities is that we must establish a more accurate narrative of what is actually happening in Nigeria. Nigeria is a nation of over 220 million people with a demographic roughly split between Christian and Muslims. To frame the conflict as Christian genocide is both inaccurate and can be dangerous as it obscures the true structural factors at play. As physicians, we don't treat isolated symptoms. We assess all symptoms, arrive at an accurate diagnosis, and then prescribe appropriate treatment. So, what are the actual factors in this conflict? Firstly, the human toll is devastating across both religious lines. Estimates indicate that anywhere from 20 to over 50,000 Christians have been killed. However, as Congressman Chris Smith also testified March 12th at a hearing on CPC, over 34,000 Muslims have also been killed in this conflict. Second, there is a herdsman farmers crisis. Fulani herdsmen, who are predominantly Muslim, graze their cattle on sedentary farmers' lands, which belong to Christians. This competition over arable land, resources, leads to direct conflict, destroyed crops, and deadly violence. Thirdly, there are bad actors exploiting this situation, criminal gangs, jihadist and terrorist groups, and known individual actors who are leveraging the chaos for political gain. And fourthly, there are strong socioeconomic factors, high youth unemployment that are driving young men towards cattle rustling, which is organized crime involving farming raids, banditry, kidnappings. And these young men are also being driven toward criminal armed gangs, jihadist groups as well. The root cause is a lack of livelihood, opportunities, inadequate education, and a persistent lack of access to things such as healthcare. Now, this brings me to our recommendations as the Nigerian Physicians Advocacy Group. And firstly, I'd like to note that our organization has published a comprehensive policy statement earlier this month, and it is on our website, www.npagroup.org. And it contains a detailed, nuanced recommendations for both the United States and the Nigerian government. So please refer to that document for the totality and the fullness of our position. But for today, we call on the United States to adhere to the findings of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedoms report published last year. That report confirms that CPC designation with sanctions alone, which are often not enforced or in many times waived, is a failing strategy. I quote from this report, it says, "It has failed to produce the genuine change needed to advance religious freedom." USERF's report recommends developing a clear engagement for each CPC designated country, including bilateral agendas, benchmarks, and timelines that help these countries improve. The report recommends bilateral religious freedom agreements, and these have been minimally utilized in the past, which explains why CPC designation with sanctions alone has proven to be ineffective. Please note that this report also suggests things like conditioned military aid, humanitarian assistance, and human rights conditional trade partnerships as examples of what qualifies as bilateral religious freedom agreements. Finally, the same report establishes that successful Bilateral, collaborative agreements requires engagement not just with governmental officials, but with civil societies, business leaders, trade associations, and government interlocutors. Essentially, it calls for an all hands on deck approach. And this is where the Nigerian diaspora comes in. We are here, we're collectively ready to serve as trusted intermediaries. We're both American and Nigerian, and we have direct access to leadership and stakeholders on both sides of this issue. The Nigerian diaspora must be a key part of the conversation going forward. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Susan, for your remarks. Please, Mr. Bukola, you will now hear from Mr. Bukola. He is the president of NIDOA. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Nkechi, and very, very educative conversations we've been having today. I'll speak on an overview of NIDOA, Nigerians in Diaspora Organization Americas. We are a recognized body that actually represents the interest, the perspectives, and contribution of Nigerians that actually live in, of course, outside Nigeria, including the United States, Canada, Central, and South Americas. As a unified voice, though, we serve as a bridge between the diaspora community and institutions in both US, Nigeria, and in these foreign countries that we do have Nigerians. Now, we do support programs that foster economic development, awareness, peace building, and leadership. We advocate for policies that protect Nigerian communities like this. And then we engage in constructive dialogue with government bodies, multilateral institutions, and communities around. Now, Nigeria representation, one of the largest and most skilled African diaspora blocks in the US, we actually play a very significant role in a lot of sectors, the medicine, education, finance, technology, public service, amongst others. It's a strategic cooperation we have with different countries we're in. Now, looking at the implication of the CPC designation, the classification, the recent one of Nigeria being a CPC country, actually acknowledges, we do acknowledge that there is the gravity of violence that emphasizes the need for accurate, balanced, non-politicized type of reporting. Now, for Nigerian Americans, we acknowledge that. And this is not, like I said by a previous speaker, not something that just started over the years, of course. However, the heightened concern, the misrepresentation of Nigerians with this designation is definitely a big concern. What's the potential impact on mobility and immigration, scrutiny, on bilateral community programs? Definitely a big emotional and psychological strain on Nigerians. Now, for the interest of America itself, now a deteriorating security perception can definitely complicate the diplomatic relationships that the US has with Nigeria. A security cooperation with Nigeria, definitely the largest democracy and economy in Africa, right? It definitely will affect a lot of the counterterrorism collaboration that is had with West Africa, of course, Nigeria being a big bloc of ECOWAS. The strategic interest, of course, of security, trade, and a couple of those. We believe that the assessment of this perceived violence must reflect the complexity of the conflict, especially in terrorism, local governance, climate-related pressures, and as much. Now, the role of diaspora leadership here in advancing this constructive engagement is facilitating a dialogue between the Nigerian government agencies, US policymakers, and of course, the international organizations. We need to make sure we're promoting fact-based reporting and discourage misinformation that actually can escalate type of tensions. Now, we can garner Nigerians in diaspora to actually help in that expertise. Now, we need to encourage peaceful diplomatic approaches to security concerns. Introduction of foreign forces into Nigeria has not, as said by the previous speaker, made the best in past terms. We need to connect diaspora talents, said that earlier, and resources to strengthen governance. And then, of course, NIDOA emphasizes on this partnership of the bigger Nigerian community, not a punitive action. That is the most effective way to reducing these concerns that we have. Now, recommendation for U.S. and, of course, Nigeria engagement. We need to establish a structured U.S.-Nigeria freedom and security working group that includes diaspora representation. We need to promote consultations between the U.S. agencies, Nigerian community collaboration like we have here, Nigerian authorities, and major policy decision makers that affect our relationships. We need to increase transparency, in the intelligence sharing and accuracy, of course. We need to strengthen diaspora inclusion. We need to promote partnership and punitive measures. And very importantly, we need to prioritize diplomatic engagement, assistance, capacity building, support Nigerian-led initiatives for the security institutions. Now, in conclusion, NIDOA definitely affirms the commitment to support Nigeria's stability, protect vulnerable communities, and foster a productive and transparent relationship between U.S. and Nigeria. The diaspora stands ready to work with policymakers, civil society organizations, international partners, and then make sure that we have our expertise, having that conversation, have a seat at the table to have further conversations. Definitely more recommendations are out there. Thank you again, Nkechi. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Bukola. Now you will hear from Prince Maduka Nkuku, the president of the Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee. Over to you, sir.
Morning, and thank you, Nkechi. Good morning, everybody. My name is Maduka Nkuku, president of the Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee, NAPAC. By way of introduction, NAPAC, our organization, represents a comprehensive approach to empowering the Nigerian American community through three distinct entities. We have a 501c3 foundation that's dedicated to charitable and educational work, a 501c4 for advocacy and network, and a network of state-level 527 political action committees. Since 2011, NAPAC has been committed to advancing the social and political influence of Nigerian Americans. Our success is demonstrated through a growing number of leaders we have helped elevate to public offices across the United States. Currently, at least 10 NAPAC members serve in elected positions across 7 states in the United States, that include the shadow representative for the District of Columbia. We have state legislators in the state of Georgia and Pennsylvania. We have a mayor pro tem in Texas, Grand Prairie, Texas. We have a mayor in Lathrop, California. We are not merely observers, but active stakeholders with seats in American boardrooms and legislative chambers, while maintaining deep personal and cultural ties to our home country, Nigeria. Now, on the policy implications of the CPC designation, we view the recent designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, coupled with threats of unilateral military action with profound concern. While we unequivocally condemn all violence and tragic loss of life in Nigeria, we believe the proposed remedies of military force and blanket sanctions represent a fundamental misdiagnosis of the situation, like everybody has said here today. The conflict cannot be reduced to a simplistic narrative of Islamic terrorists versus Christians. The reality is far more complex. The reality is that these issues are driven by climate-induced desertification, that fuel resource competition between farmers and herders, widespread poverty, and systemic government failures. Military action cannot address a drought. And broad sanctions only deepen despair without resolving underlying causes. Now, we see opportunities for the United States government to collaborate with NAPAC and the Nigerian diaspora community. And we believe that NAPAC offers a unique capability as a bridge between American policy and Nigerian reality. Our community possesses the cultural competence and ground-level understanding that satellite imagery just can't present. And the diplomatic reporting cannot capture these, the things that NAPAC and the Nigerian community can provide. We stand ready to serve as trusted intermediaries, facilitating dialogue between U.S. agencies and local communities in Nigeria, and providing nuanced intelligence necessary for effective policy formulation. We have 2 or 3 recommendations for a sustained advocacy and partnership. We propose a strategic shift from pressure to partnership through 3 specific approaches. Security sector reform. The U.S. support should emphasize training Nigerian security forces in human rights and community policing rather than focusing primarily on arms supply. We believe that addressing the root causes through strategic investment in economic development programs and climate-resilient agriculture in conflict-prone regions would help alleviate the underlying drivers of violence. We believe that implementation of the Magnitsky-style sanctions against individual corrupt actors and militia leaders rather than blanket sanctions that disproportionately harm the general population would be a preferred option. And in conclusion, NAPAC stands ready to collaborate with the United States government in developing these approaches further. We believe this path of partnership, leveraging our community and our community's unique position and expertise, offers the best opportunity for achieving sustainable peace and stability rather than greater instability. Thank you so much, and I will hand over back to you, Nkechi.
Thank you, sir. And now we will hear from Dr. Malcolm, President of the Governance Advancement Initiative for Nigeria. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Nkechi, and thanks to everybody for participating in this conversation. My name is Malcolm Fabi. I'm president of GAIN, the Governance Advancement Initiative for Nigeria, and our mission is to promote accountability and improve governance in Nigeria through research, analysis, and policy advocacy. First, I want to thank those who have consistently raised concerns about Nigeria's security crisis. Tony Ogebe for his advocacy, Congressman Smith, Senator Cruz, and other members of the U.S. Congress for their efforts on highlighting Nigeria's security challenges in their prior CPC resolutions. We believe that President Trump's designation has helped to shine a light on this issue and is helping to redirect the focus of Nigeria's government. Nigeria is a diverse nation with 250 ethnic groups, 2 major religions, and hundreds of traditional beliefs. And in such complexity, some voices often go unheard. U.S. engagement has helped many of these communities, especially Christians in the Middle Belt, feel that their concerns matter and that their voices are finally being heard. Our data-driven analysis of Nigeria's security situation leads to 3 key conclusions. The first is that the Nigerian state is not structured for systemic genocide against Christians or any groups, because the security apparatus is actually equitably populated by Christians and Muslims. So 5 of Nigeria's 9 top security chiefs are Christians, including the Chief of Defense Staff, the Inspector General of Police, the heads of the Air Force, the State Security Services, and Defense Intelligence. The remaining 4, the National Security Advisor, the Chief Justice, the heads of the Army and Navy are Muslims, and only 1 of them is Fulani. This balance makes narratives of coordinated extermination implausible. Even President Tinubu, a Muslim, is married to an ordained Christian minister, a reflection of Nigeria's complexity. Second, Fulani militants, often blamed for attacks on Christian communities, have also killed tens of thousands of Hausa Muslim farmers in the Northwest. And in Zamfara state alone, in the Nigerian Northwest, 6,800 Muslims were killed in just the first half of 2025, almost as many as the 6,900 deaths in Benue State, the Middle Belt state, over the last 2 years. This is not a one-sided crisis. It affects Christians and Muslims alike. And third, the key question is, why is this happening? Our research work in this space since 2016 shows that this is not primarily a religious or ethnic conflict. A lot of speakers today have made the point that it is a resource conflict. Fulani herders are nomadic, and for decades, Nigeria maintained grazing routes for them. But in the 60 plus years since these grazing routes were established, Nigeria's population has grown by 340%, from 50 million people to 220 million people today. Nigeria's cattle stock has risen by 165% in the same time frame, while the accessible forage lands have shrank by 40%. Rainfall has dropped by 23% in that same time frame, and insecurity in the Northeast has blocked access to over 30% of these grazing routes. These pressures are pushing herders further south into farming communities and sparking deadly clashes. The solution is clear. We need to transition Fulani herders from nomadic grazing to commercial ranching. Nigeria has created a Ministry of Livestock last year to support this, but progress is still slow. And without systemic solutions, the cycle of violence will continue. So what can be done? We believe that these three things are true. That one, Nigeria does face real security challenges. Two, the Nigerian government must do better. And that three, there is an opportunity for US-Nigeria partnership to help. We believe that this partnership should focus on 4 areas. The first one is security cooperation to eliminate militant actors, cut off their funding, arrest and prosecute their sponsors and supporters. The second is agricultural support to help herders adopt ranching, leveraging US expertise. The third is humanitarian aid for the over 5 million internally displaced Nigerians. And the fourth is targeted actions and sanctions on individuals and entities that are perpetuating the crisis through corruption or inaction. In conclusion, we believe that Nigeria's security crisis is urgent but solvable. By addressing root causes and fostering collaboration, we believe there's an opportunity here to create lasting peace and prosperity for all Nigerians. Thank you, and I yield back to you, Nkechi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And that concludes our speaker's delivery, but I just wanted to do a very brief recap. I think we can all agree that sanctions alone through this country particular concern designation, while important, it cannot simply address the root causes of Nigeria's insecurity. As our speakers mentioned, insecurity in Nigeria is multidimensional, driven by governance challenges, economic marginalization, ethno-religious tensions, climate pressure, and a weak justice mechanism. Because these drivers are deeply entrenched in punitive measures alone cannot shift the underlying dynamics. Instead, a comprehensive partnership-driven approach is required. Engaging the Nigerian diaspora. The Nigerian diaspora is one of the most influential and resourceful in the world, contributing billions of dollars annually in remittances, skills, and investments. Yet, our potential as strategic partners in conflict mitigation, good governance, is often underutilized. Sanctions and designations can raise awareness, yes, and pressure governments, yes, but they cannot heal the division or rebuild systems. Our speakers today identified a few pillars in detail, but just to round it up: diaspora engagement, structured dialogue, national advisory councils, humanitarian assistance, as well as humanitarian protections for Nigerians here in the U.S., such as TPS. Together, these elements form a comprehensive pathway towards a sustainable peace and national renewal. So that concludes our speakers' deliveries, and we are going to now enter the Q&A session. If you have a question, please feel free to either click the reaction button and raise your hand, or you can type in your questions in the chat, and I'm going to start reading questions now. We do have a question from Daniela Cheslow at Politico, and she asks the speakers, who are we speaking to in the administration and in Congress? And has our coalition engaged any lobbying firms?
I can begin with that. When this designation was announced, October 31st, our first point of action is to issue a joint statement. Subsequent to that is this press conference. And the third phase of our response is US and Nigeria engagement. Prior to this specific designation, we have met with congressional officers, both on the Republican side and also on the Democratic side. We've met with Congressman Smith's office. We've met with House Committee on African Affairs, Jonathan Jackson, elevating this issue of Nigeria's designation, and we want to continue to do so. The coalition have also met with the Nigerian embassy to also try to hear the response from the Nigerian government. And what we heard back as a feedback is that governments to government are in active dialogue as we speak right now. What we, however, amplify is the need for consideration of civic voices and diaspora representation, hence this press conference.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Susan, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, and just to add to what Benga has already said, we in fact had a meeting with Ted Cruz's office yesterday. Again, Ted Cruz is very central to this as he proposed the Nigerian Religious Freedom Act this year. And in that meeting, we again emphasized the same things as we did today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Susan. NTA Network, I see your hand was up. You can unmute and ask your question.
Yes, sorry. I think both Dr. Susan and Mr. Ogunjimi almost preempted my question. My question was actually based on the prospects for building a bipartisan consensus there in the US over this whole issue. I mean, one that goes, beyond the religious persecution frame and narrative, that is ongoing, to one that is more holistic, that reflects the kind of partnership that speakers here have talked about. That's one. And two, just like I said, Mr. Ogunjimi almost preempted the two questions that I had. My next question is the I dare say, I mean, it's the diplomatic vacuum that we as Nigeria happen to have right now in the US. It will seem, or maybe I frame this as a question, does this seem in any way that, Nigerians or the absence of Nigeria's like a full-time ambassador in Washington there has impacted our own ability to shape, the narrative and advocate for, some of these complex issues that we have here in Nigeria? Has that in any way impacted on this whole advocacy? I beg your pardon. Those are my two questions.
Thank you, sir. Any of our speakers could answer that question. President Prince, yes, sir.
Yes, thank you. Let me start with the second question. The absence of an ambassador in the United States, and I know it's not just the United States as far as Nigerian ambassadors are concerned, is obviously a problem. And that is why the coalition is stepping forward to make sure that we are heard. like Mr. Benga said earlier, we have had consultations with the embassy, and we do believe that they are handicapped to a large extent. Not just do we not have ambassador, the charge d'affaires and the staff that are even in the embassy and the consulates do not appear to have the resources that they need to even do their work. So we are hoping that this issue here will help our government back home to appoint ambassadors, and so that we can begin to direct and control the narrative concerning our country. Thank you. Let me allow somebody else to take the first question. Thank you.
Dr. Susan.
My apologies. To the first question, which I believe was about pushing for a more bilateral, holistic response. What I really appreciate about what you said in that question.
The prospect of a bipartisan consensus there in the US, you talked about meeting with Ted Cruz. I wanted to know what the prospects are for, perhaps building a bipartisan consensus there in the US, that goes beyond the religious prosecution frame, one that, engenders and talks about a more holistic partnership with Nigeria rather than military action.
Well, I think in a lot of our lobbying and meeting with congressional leaders, we do know that there's bipartisan attention, there's bipartisan concern, there's bipartisan input, like on both sides of the aisle, not just on the Republican side, but we have like Congressman Jackson, Congressman Sherfless McCormick, on either side of the aisle who want to see Nigeria succeed on this issue. The reason why I wanted to respond to what you said is I think outside of the bipartisanness, which I don't think is an issue, it's really making sure that everybody involved presses into supporting holistic policy. What you said with those words are the exact words that were taken from USCIRF's report, which is what I mentioned earlier. The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom is an independent governmental body that was established by the IRFA Act, the same act that established CPC. And so the fact that this report is calling for a bipartisan response, but more so a holistic policy between CPC designated countries and those in the United States, I think it has to be highlighted and emphasized. And that's very important that we get that messaging out there. Thank you.
Benga.
Yes, I just want to quickly touch on some of those questions. Number one, regarding the embassy ambassador, Nigeria Center, we wrote an op-ed about 2 years ago now, stating the importance of the presence of a full ambassador. I also recognize the current leadership of the embassy with the limitation they have and what they've been doing, but definitely there is some vacuum there that must be recognized. But beyond just sending an ambassador to the United States, diplomacy in this time and age is multi-pronged. And I think in terms of diplomacy cannot just be limited to government interaction. It has to be multifaceted. And that is why coalitions like this is important. And one of the catalysts this designation have done is you are hearing from leading national Nigerian American organizations in key sectors that is critical sectors to both the United States and Nigeria. We're looking at NAPAC with representation at the federal and state level across the United States politically. We're looking at NPAG and AMPA with the force and the weight this sector brings to healthcare access. We're looking at the Nigerian Center with outreach with human services, policy advocacy, and financial inclusion opportunities. Our voices need to be incorporated in US-Nigeria dialogue and partnership that has been missing for far too long. And I think I want to highlight that. Now, regarding bipartisanship, I also want to mention that this coalition is actually actively pushing to reactivate the Nigerian Congressional Caucus, which will be the representation for Nigerians' voice on Capitol Hill. So whenever things like this happen, we are getting bipartisanship consensus, and that elevating this issue is not going to be unique to Nigeria. We used to have one before, and now this coalition is helping to reestablish it. Thank you.
Thank you, Venga. We do have a question in the chat. While this is from Reed Kramer, while various members of Congress have spoken out on violence against Christians, what might explain the timing of the statements by the president, the US president? Was it prompted by particular American or Nigerian organizations or individuals with influence in Trump's circles?
I can attempt. I can perhaps attempt to speak to that. It is difficult to know precisely what it is, but I would say there are probably several contributory factors. Prior CPC designations or requests for those designations and bills for those designations had been pushed significantly by the House. More recently, we've actually seen that the Senate, driven by folks like Senator Cruz, have also become involved. But the reality also is that the crisis in Nigeria is real. People are being killed. And in June, there was a particularly terrible crisis where a city in Benue State called Yelwata, where there was a terrible assault. There were lots of killings. And there were comments about those killings, including by the Pope. So the reality is that there have been many, many incidents, many of them recent, that has actually raised the profile of those killings in the country. So I think it's more than yes, the issue has been ongoing for a while, but I think the combination of the extension of the push on CPC beyond the House being taken up by the Senate, and the fact that we have these high visibility killings that still take place. And it, unfortunately, while the rest of the world was speaking about the issues, in Nigeria, the security forces and the government were slow to respond. So there is a real crisis. And I think what we need to emphasize is that a lot of the efforts taking place here today is not to say there is no crisis, there is a crisis, but to indicate that there are some more productive ways where the particular issue at hand can be addressed with a scalpel rather than a broad hammer.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bukola, please.
Just a quick point, just to measure that statement is this CPC designation is not the first time it's been put on Nigeria, by the way. We had it at some point in 2020-ish, and it was removed in 2021. What we have done between then and now could be a major factor also in this new designation. So as a myriad of functions, of course, there are organizations that probably mentioned, there are people close to the president that mentioned, and of course, the ongoing situation in Nigeria adds to it. But let's not forget, this has been an ongoing situation that has not been addressed.
Thank you. Dr. Susan, please.
Thank you. And I agree with what the previous speakers have said. And I would also like to state two other things. The IRFA of 1998, which is the act that establishes CPC designation, requires that every year the president review countries that are on the CPC list or should be on the CPC list, and also review countries that are, quote, special watch list countries. So every year this is supposed to happen. And in fact, in 2020, it happened on during the Trump administration. The Biden administration removed Nigeria from the CPC list. So that is one. And then the other thing too is there's a lot of social media pressures, more than I've seen in previous years. I've seen, influencers who I didn't even know if they knew where Nigeria was talking about this crisis. And I think that plays into why it's really become such a part of a large national conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Susan. We do have another question from Abiodun. Has there been efforts by the coalition to interface with Reverend Ezekiel Dachoma, a cleric from Nigeria who also doubles as a regional chairman of the Church of Christ in Nations, Plateau State, who has been vocal about the genocide claims in Nigeria? And anyone could take that.
Well, I can respond to that. It has been abundantly stated, we are not in disagreement with the crisis, the insecurity crisis in Nigeria. Also, we are not a religious kind of coalition. We are either advocacy groups or nonprofit 501c3 humanitarian organization. I should state, we are a U.S. organization. We are located and our primary constituencies legally is the United States. But oftentimes we have the opportunity to weigh in on issues that affect our community who has both citizenship in the United States and in Nigeria. And specifically, we elevate these issues to policies and to political elected office holders in policy framing. And we try to get perspective predominantly within the United States to either the United States government or the US government. So how do we do that? We do community town halls. We do press briefings. So at our last community town halls, we actually have groups in America. One of them is ICON. One of them is Attorney Emmanuel Ogebe, one of the main proponents of the CPC designation. With experts like Dr. Malcolm, we have congressional representation. And when we do this, we actually allow folks to have perspective both in favor and against the designation, and have our people engage in the legislative process in America, because we see a measure of political apathy in engaging with our legislative process. So really that is our own approach in engaging when it comes to Nigerian specific issues. We have not met, this coalition have not met with this reverend, with this political faith leader. We have met with others. However, those we meet with are largely within the United States, Nigerian American community. But all the speakers, please feel free to respond as well.
Yes, sir. Bukola.
Yeah, in addition, just a quick point again, I wanted to mention, Mr. Benga rightly coined representation. I think with the media here, we should actually ask for that partnership on how to probably share this with the right folks, the Nigerian government, on engaging people that are actually speaking on this. I'm hoping it's 2020 now, but I'm hoping when there is a clamor about a concern, I believe the government can actually advocate and wonder what is happening. How can we resolve this? So hopefully the media can help see how he can actually be engaged to understand if the concerns are still real or they're being mitigated.
Thank you. We have some time for another question. Is there any more questions? If not, thank you so much for attending our press conference. I will post the link in the chat of our joint statement by all the organizations. And if you would like a recording, this recording, my email address is in the chat as well. I'm going to share Liz Voya's email as well, so that you can receive the recording, this recording. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us through these emails, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.